There is a city in America that UNESCO declared the first creative city of gastronomy in the United States. Not New York, not Chicago, not New Orleans. Tucson, Arizona. Population 540,000. 60 miles from the Mexican border. Surrounded by 5 mountain ranges in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. The people of this desert have been cultivating food for over 4,000 years. That is the longest continuous agricultural history of any city in the United States. Before the Declaration of Independence, before the colonies, before anyone called this place Arizona. In the early 1950s, Monica Flynn was frying taco shells in her kitchen at El Charro Cafe on Court Street in downtown Tucson. She accidentally dropped a burrito into the hot oil. Hot oil splashed. She began to say a Spanish curse word starting with chi and stopped herself. Her young nieces and nephews were in the kitchen. Instead of the curse, she said, chimichanga, the Spanish equivalent of thingamajig. The burrito was crispy, golden, and sealed completely on all sides. It was better than the original. She put it on the menu. El Charro Cafe was founded by Flynn in 1922. It is the oldest Mexican restaurant in continuous operation by the same family in the United States. The building it occupies was constructed in 1896 by her father, a French stonemason commissioned to build Tucson's St. Augustine Cathedral. Flynn's grandniece Carlotta Flores still runs it today. Phoenix claims the chimichanga too. Woody Johnson of Macayos says he deep-fried unsold burritos in 1946. Retired University of Arizona folklorist Jim Griffith recalls seeing chimichangas at the Yaqui Old Pascua village in the mid-1950s. The argument has no clean resolution. This is not an American hot dog. This is not a Mexican taco. This is what happens at the border when neither side agrees to stay on their own side. A Sonoran hot dog is an all-beef hot dog wrapped in bacon and grilled until the bacon crisps. It is nestled in a bolillo-style bun, soft, oval, sturdier than any hot dog bun you've had before, toasted in butter on a flat top. Then, pinto beans, diced tomatoes, grilled onions, yellow mustard, mayonnaise, and jalapeno salsa. A roasted guero chile on the side. That is the sandwich. The dog originated in Hermosillo, the capital of the Mexican state of Sonora, in the 1980s, popular at university vendor carts and at baseball games. By the late 1980s, it had crossed the border into Tucson and found exactly the audience it deserved. Over 200 doggeros, street vendors, operate in the greater Tucson area. They park on gravel lots under white canvas canopies and arrange folding tables around their carts. This is how you eat a Sonoran hot dog, not in a restaurant, on a folding table, in a parking lot. At 10 p.m., look up at the roof of El Charro Cafe on Court Street. You will see wire cages hanging in the Arizona sun. Inside those cages is beef. Strips of seasoned beef drying in the open desert air. Not smoked, not cured with chemicals, dried by the sun and the heat and the low humidity of the Sonoran Desert, a process that concentrates the flavor of the meat into something dense, almost jerky-like on the outside and tender within. Carne seca, dried beef, predates El Charro by centuries. A Jesuit missionary named Bernardo Middendorf documented sharing dried meat with the Tohono O'odham people of the Santa Cruz Valley in 1757, writing that he gave them dried meat to win their goodwill. The Spanish colonial frontier protein of choice was sun-dried beef. It was the food that moved across the desert because it could survive the heat, the distance, and the time. El Charro is the only restaurant in Tucson permitted to dry beef on its roof. They have been doing it for over a century. A city ordinance grandfathered them in. You can see the cages from the street. The beef dries for days before being shredded and folded into chimichangas, tacos, and burritos below, before the Spanish arrived, before any European touched this desert. The Tohono O'odham and other Sonoran desert peoples were cultivating the Tepary bean. Tepary beans are small, dense legumes, white, brown, black, or speckled, adapted over thousands of years to grow in desert conditions that would kill almost any other crop. They need minimal water. They can survive temperatures that reach 115 degrees. They fix nitrogen in the soil as they grow. They are one of the most drought-resistant food crops in human history. and they have been grown in the Sonoran Desert for at least 5,000 years. They nearly disappeared in the 20th century. Industrial agriculture replaced them with commodity beans that needed irrigation and predictable rainfall, things the Sonoran Desert does not reliably offer. By the 1970s, Tepary beans were nearly extinct as a cultivated crop. Then Gary Nabhan founded Native Seeds/Search, a Tucson nonprofit seed bank that has been collecting, preserving, and distributing heirloom seeds from across the Southwest since 1983. Tepary beans were among the first seeds they saved. Today, Tucson chefs use them on menus across the city. James Beard. Award winner Janos Wilder builds dishes around them. The chiltepin is the only chili pepper native to the United States. It grows wild in the canyons and desert washes of southern Arizona and northern Mexico. A small, round, ferociously hot pepper about the size of a pea, ripe when red, used dried or fresh, and considered by the Tohono O'odham people to be a sacred plant. Arizona has designated it the official state native wild chili. Federal wilderness areas in southern Arizona protect wild chiltepin populations. The heat is immediate and intense, estimated at up to 100,000 Scoville units. But it fades quickly, unlike the lingering burn of a jalapeno. It is the ancestral pepper from which many cultivated chili varieties descend. Botanists believe domesticated chili peppers were developed from wild chiltepin ancestors over thousands of years of selective cultivation. In Tucson, chiltepin appears in salsas, on meats, in hot sauces, and in the craft chocolate from Monsoon Chocolate, a Tucson bean-to-bar chocolatier whose signature bars include chiltepin and Sonoran sea salt. The saguaro cactus is the symbol of the Sonoran Desert. The prickly pear is its pantry. Prickly pear cacti produce a brilliant magenta fruit, the tuna, that has been harvested in the Sonoran Desert for thousands of years. The Tohono O'odham make syrup from it, fermented into a ceremonial wine called nawait used in rain-making rituals, and eat the pads, nopales, as a vegetable after removing the spines. Every part of the plant is used. No part is wasted. In Tucson, prickly pear shows up everywhere. Prickly pear lemonade, prickly pear margaritas, prickly pear candy, jam, syrup, vinaigrette, sorbet. The magenta color is so distinctive that it has become part of Tucson's visual identity. Menus across the city use it as a design element alongside the food. The harvest season is late summer, when the heat of the Arizona August has ripened the fruit to its fullest. Families pick tunas using wooden tongs, careful of the tiny glochids. Hair-thin spines invisible to the eye, but intensely irritating to the skin. The mesquite tree is the most common tree in the Sonoran Desert. The Tohono O'odham have been grinding its seed pods into flour for thousands of years. Mesquite pods are sweet. The pods themselves, not just the seeds, contain natural sugars. Ground into flour, mesquite produces a fine, slightly sweet, slightly smoky powder with a flavor profile, unlike any grain flour in existence. It contains no gluten. It is high in protein, fiber, and calcium. It was the primary grain of desert communities before wheat arrived with the Spanish. Tucson bakers and chefs have revived mesquite flour as a heritage ingredient. It appears in pancakes at the Sunday farmers market, in tortillas at restaurants committed to Sonoran heritage cooking, in cookies and muffins at local bakeries. The Mission Garden, a living agricultural museum at the base of a mountain in downtown Tucson, on the site of one of the original O'odham settlements, grows mesquite alongside other heritage crops and offers demonstrations of traditional grinding. This is the soup that Tucson grew up on, and that most of the country has never heard of. Caldo de queso is a Sonoran cheese soup, a broth of potatoes, roasted green chili, onion, garlic, and tomato, finished with chunks of Mexican white cheese, Oaxaca, Chihuahua, or queso fresco, that soften but do not fully melt, staying in distinct pieces in the soup rather than dissolving into it. The cheese is the point. The broth and the chile are the context. This is not queso dip. This is not cheese sauce. This is soup in which cheese is an ingredient with texture and presence, in which the hatch-adjacent Sonoran green chile gives every spoonful a roasted, slightly smoky heat that arrives after the richness of the broth. Caldo de queso appears on nearly every Sonoran Mexican restaurant menu in Tucson. It does not appear on Tex-Mex menus in Texas. It does not appear in Mexican restaurants in New York, or Chicago, or Los Angeles. It is a Sonoran dish, specifically northern Mexico and southern Arizona, and Tucson is the place in the United States where it is most fully present. This is the soup that Tucson grew up on, and that most of the country has never heard of. Caldo de queso is a Sonoran cheese soup, a broth of potatoes, roasted green chili, onion, garlic, and tomato, finished with chunks of Mexican white cheese, Oaxaca, Chihuahua, or queso fresco, that soften but do not fully melt, staying in distinct pieces in the soup rather than dissolving into it. The cheese is the point. The broth and the chile are the context. This is not queso dip. This is not cheese sauce. This is soup in which cheese is an ingredient with texture and presence, in which the hatch-adjacent Sonoran green chile gives every spoonful a roasted, slightly smoky heat that arrives after the richness of the broth. Caldo de queso appears on nearly every Sonoran Mexican restaurant menu in Tucson. It does not appear on Tex-Mex menus in Texas. It does not appear in Mexican restaurants in New York, or Chicago, or Los Angeles. It is a Sonoran dish, specifically northern Mexico and southern Arizona, and Tucson is the place in the United States where it is most fully present. In 2015, UNESCO made a decision that surprised most of the American food world. They designated Tucson, not San Francisco, not New Orleans, not New York, as the first creative city of gastronomy in the United States. The designation recognized an agricultural heritage stretching back 4,000 years, a living food culture built on indigenous ingredients and practices, and a city that had never stopped cooking the way it always had. More heritage foods are grown within 100 miles of Tucson than within 100 miles of any other city in North America. The Tepary bean and the chiltepin and the mesquite and the prickly pear and the white Sonoran wheat, all of it grown in the same desert, by the same communities, using the same knowledge passed down across generations that predate the United States itself. Not every city has a restaurant that accidentally named a dish by stopping a curse word mid-syllable. Not every city has a street food that won the James Beard Foundation's highest honor while operating from a folding table in a parking lot. Not every city has been growing the same beans in the same desert for 5,000 years.